live drama that's going on. I'm going to cover some of it today. Pull this up. So let me go live on Instagram and I'll be with you in a second. Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Zioni. There we go. Cool. We are live. So it is Monday morning. My name is Kyle and this is the AI with Kyle show. I do this as a live every single morning around 10 a.m. UK time, going through the latest news and updates in the world of artificial intelligence. I'll also be taking questions from the audience who are live, joining us from various channels: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, you name it. Not Pinterest. That's probably the only one we're leaving out. Or Pinterest. Do you remember them? So over the weekend, people have been getting to grips with GPT-5. A lot of people have been upset. If you haven't seen any of this discourse, I recommend going and checking out the r/ChatGPT subreddit on Reddit, obviously. It's fascinating. It's very interesting as a slice to see how some people are not taking the release of GPT-5 very well, especially because 4.0 was killed. So it's mainly to do with the deprecation of 4.0. 4.0 was the kind of the workhorse model. It wasn't the top model, that was 03, but it was the everyday model that most people used before the rollout of GPT-5. And when GPT-5 came out, 4.0 got removed entirely. There was such a large backlash against it that they have now reinstated 4.0. The way to do that, if you don't know this already, you go into your settings, then show legacy models, you can turn it on, and then that allows you to now pick 4.0 from the model selector. You can only do that if you are on a Plus or a Pro account. I wonder if they'll roll it back to free users as well. That would kind of be them doing a full retreat from the GPT-5 model, which would be a shame. But a lot of people are very angry about GPT-5. And I'm going to go through a couple of reasons why I think why. Obviously, people are entitled to their opinions. I do not agree. I think GPT-5 is a good model. I think it's a very solid model, especially when it comes to coding. So I do not agree that 4.0 is a better model. But there are a few complications which mean that what these people are saying is incredibly valid. The first one, and I think the most damaging, is to do with routing. So I'm going to pull up a graph from Ethan Mollick. Ethan Mollick is the associate professor at the Wharton School, smart guy who wrote a book called Co-Intelligence, which I have around here somewhere. Really, really clever guy. You should follow him if you're not already. So he's pointed out that the main issue with GPT-5 is that it's a unified model. So you log on and you see GPT-5. That's all you see. And you do not have any transparency. You do not have any insight into what's going on under the hood. That was already an issue with large language models, but this is worse because there's an unpredictability of a new order of magnitude. So basically, under the hood of GPT-5, there are multiple, I'm not sure if we're calling them models, but there are different models underneath. So underneath, there's GPT-5 High, GPT-5 Medium, GPT-5 Low, and then at the bottom, something called GPT-5 Minimal. So these are like sub-models. I'm not sure what term we're using, or maybe we're just calling them models, but they are under the surface. So when you go and you ask a question of GPT-5, GPT-5 currently decides which of its sub-models it should use, and then it routes your question, it routes your query to that model. So sometimes it's going to be routed to GPT-5, which is by most measures the best model we've ever had. It's really, really good. GPT-5 High, sorry. GPT-5 Medium, also really, really good. So if it does that, you're going to get a great answer. And you're going to read the answer and be like, wow, okay, GPT-5 is amazing. However, sometimes it's going to send your question to GPT-5 Low or even GPT-5 Minimal. So GPT-5 Low is apparently above DeepSeek, but below O3 and below O4. So below the previous ChatGPT models that people were using. And GPT-5 Minimal is way down at the bottom. So it's slightly better than Llama 4. So to give you an idea, there's an artificial analysis intelligence index. Artificialanalysis.ai is a website. They have these kind of intelligence scales. Obviously, there are problems with those, but just to give you a relative idea, GPT-5 High is scoring 69 on that index, which is the highest of all the models across all of the companies. GPT-5 Medium is 68. Then it's Grok 4, 68, O3, 67, O4 Mini High, 65, etc. GPT-5 Low comes in at 63. And then GPT-5 Minimal comes in at 44. So this, I think, is a real problem, is we do not know where our query is going to get routed to. So sometimes you'll get a genius answer. You get the PhD level answer that OpenAI have been talking about. Sometimes it seems like the model's been lobotomized and you have no idea why it's so terrible. And that's because you're getting a crapper model, basically. It's a bizarre move. I can see why they're doing it. It costs them a lot less to run the lower level models, and technically on easier, lower difficulty queries, they should be able to get away with a lower level model providing the answer. The problem is basically with the routing right now, and that it's all over the place, and it creates too much chaos, too much unpredictability. So I think that's a very genuine issue that's going on. The other issue, and this is why I'd love for you to go and have a look at the ChatGPT subreddit, is it's an emotional connection to GPT-4o. So Sam Altman has actually put out a tweet today, which I'll read in full because it's probably the most I've ever heard him talk about the topic of artificial intelligence and its effect on, well, on parasocial relationships. So kind of falling in love and building relationships with AI. He's put out a statement. So I'll read that in a moment. But if you go over to the ChatGPT subreddit, basically the whole thing is people getting quite upset, emotionally upset about the death of 4o and GPT-5 taking its place. So I don't want to in any way downplay their feelings. If someone has an opinion, if someone feels this way, that is how they feel. Absolutely. And we cannot take that from them. And there's actually a whole, I can't find it, but there's a whole subreddit here, which is really interesting about that, about this is my opinion, so please don't stomp on it. But what's happened is a lot of people have really enjoyed using 4o, and it's become like their friend. It's become a therapist. It's become, a shoulder to cry on. It's become their companion, basically. And 4o in particular, one of the reasons why it may have done this is 4o was very sycophantic. It would always agree. So what they've done with 5 is remove that. 5 will tell you if you are wrong. So I love this. I've been coding with 5 over the weekend, and a lot of the previous models, I would give it ideas and be like, is that a good idea, or should we do that? And they'd be like, yeah, great idea. Now, I'm not a master level coder, so it should not be saying that. It should be saying, actually, no, that's dumb. There's no way we should be doing that. We've got a plan. Let's stick to it. GPT-5 does that. GPT-5 will tell me, no, that's not how we should be doing it. I understand why you're saying that, but that's wrong. I love that. I love that in a model because it will push back. However, some people who were not using it for professional usage, they weren't using it for, for entrepreneurship, they weren't using it for coding, but instead they're using it for companionship and someone to talk to, someone as a guide, somebody to confide with. They are now getting that same level of brutal honesty. So instead of being told, instead of being agreed with by GPT-4o, because it was sycophantic, it tended to agree with everything, they're now being told, no, like, cut your bullshit, what you're talking about, which I think is upsetting a lot of people, and I can understand why. So most of the complaints are people who wanted 4o as a friend. They wanted it as a companion, and now suddenly all of the warmth has been removed from it and it's been turned back into a tool. I can see why ChatGPT, OpenAI did this, because there are a lot of complaints from one corner of the internet, like my corner of the internet, saying it's too sycophantic, it's not helpful, we need it to give us the truth and to be harsh with us. But then there are other people who used it as companionship who did not want that, and now they're very upset, and they're mainly on this ChatGPT subreddit. So go and have a look, it's fascinating. I'm going to get to questions in a minute, but I did want to read, there's a couple of things from Sam Altman. Sam Altman's been on damage control this weekend, basically, because I think they weren't expecting this to be as rough as it's been. So there's one short thing I wanted to point out, which is, okay, the percentage of users using the reasoning models each day is significantly increasing. So for free users, we went from less than 1% to 7%, and for plus users, 7% to 24%. I expect use of reasoning to greatly increase over time, so rate limit increases are important. So previously, when we used GPT-4, 4.0, 0.3, etc., you actually had to select the reasoning model 0.3. Most people didn't know how to do that, or where that was, or what it was. If you opened up that selector, it was horrendous. It was just a big long list of letters and numbers and very little guidance. So people were not using the reasoning models. One of the great things about GPT-5 is suddenly you're given the reasoning model and you don't have to think to use it. So if you give it a complicated question, GPT-5 should, again, this is a routing issue, it should pop GPT-5 into the high mode, and then it's going to be able to do reasoning with you. So that means free users have now got access and are using a lot more reasoning. And same with paid. Paid users gone from 7% to 24%, and free users from 1% or less than 1% to 7%. So more people are now getting access to a higher level of the model and using a higher level of the model than were before. So it's kind of a boring statistic, but really, really, really important. Because the floor has been raised for everybody. But the thing I want to talk about, which was a bit more interesting, was this very long tweet from Sam. So Sam Altman normally writes little short, pithy tweets. By the way, he shouldn't be the only one speaking for the company. This is dangerous. Not just because it's him, but because this is a kind of dangerous for a company, but that's another thing. But I'm going to read this in full because it is so interesting. So again, he does not normally put out these long proclamations. He doesn't normally touch on these issues. So the fact that he has means that the response to GPT-5 has hit a nerve. Some more because this is a long one. So if you have been following the GPT-5 rollout, one thing you might have noticed is how much of an attachment some people have to specific AI models. 4.0. It feels different and stronger than the kinds of attachment people have had to previous kinds of technology. And so suddenly deprecating old models that users depended on in their workflows was a mistake. He's still an engineer. He calls them workflows. Again, these are people who are talking to 4.0 for companionship and friendship. That's not a workflow, Sam. These are people, okay? This is something we've been closely tracking for the past year or so, but still hasn't got much mainstream attention, other than when we released an update to 4.0 that was too sycophantic. So there was, maybe 6 months ago, they released an update. Immediately people were like, oh, it's glazing me, it's telling me I'm right all the time, and they pushed it back a bit. So it was even more sycophantic for a period. Then he's got in brackets, this is just my current thinking and not yet an official OpenAI position. Again, you're the CEO, so it kind of is, Sam, because they don't put out much other information apart from you. People have used technology, including AI, in self-destructive ways. If a user is in a mentally fragile state and prone to delusion, we do not want their AI to reinforce that. Good. Most users can keep a clear line between reality and fictional roleplay, but a small percentage cannot. We value user freedom as a core principle, but we also feel responsible in how we introduce new technology with new risks. So this is in response to things like AI psychosis, which is the most 2025 arse sounding thing you could ever think of. It's so dystopian. Basically, people who are already in a position where their mental health is compromised, and AI can help push that over the edge because it agrees with them in their delusions, and it can agree with them and reinforce what they're thinking. Very dangerous. So encouraging delusion in a user that is having trouble telling the difference between reality and fiction is an extreme case, and it's pretty clear what to do. But the concerns that worry me most are more subtle. This is fair. There are going to be lots of edge cases, and generally we plan to follow the principle of treat adult users like adults, which in some cases will include pushing back on users to ensure they're getting what they really want, which in some cases will include pushing back on users to ensure they're getting what they really want. Oh, I see. So for the model, we'll push back. So I thought this was OpenAI pushing back and giving them what they want, which would be very paternalistic. So this will include the model sometimes saying, actually, that's not what's good for you. What is good for you is this. A lot of people effectively use ChatGPT as a sort of therapist or life coach, even if they wouldn't describe it that way. This can be really good. A lot of people are getting value from it already today. I personally use it for help with my business. So I will talk things through with ChatGPT or Claude in order to help to solidify my thinking. So I think this is very normal. Well, I do it personally. I'm not sure about you. I'm sure you do. If people are getting good advice, leveling up towards their own goals, and their life satisfaction is increasing over years, we'll be proud of making something genuinely helpful, even if they use and rely on ChatGPT a lot. If, on the other hand, users have a relationship with ChatGPT where they think they feel better after talking, but they're unknowingly nudged away from their longer term well being, however they define it, that's bad. It's also bad, for example, if a user wants to use ChatGPT less and feels like they cannot. So, addiction, he's touching on here. So, this is basically you can get ChatGPT to agree with your bad decisions. So, if you ask, hey, I don't think I should go to the gym because I read a study about it's bad for your joints and I want to preserve my joints. Should I not go to the gym? 4.0 would be like, yeah, you should absolutely not go to the gym. The gym's a dangerous place. You can destroy your joints. Here's some studies. And you can reinforce what you already think. I'm just using that as an example, but you can use that in anything at all. You can reinforce and it will tell you, yes, you're right. You are a genius. Great job. 5 won't do that. 5 will be like, no. Get off the sofa and go to the gym. Go for a run. Which I like. I love that part of 5. So I can imagine a future where a lot of people really trust ChatGPT's advice for their most important decisions. They already are. Remember, we saw the Prime Minister of Sweden is using ChatGPT. He got in trouble for that last week. Although that could be great, it makes me uneasy. But I expect that it is coming to some degree. Yes, he's right. And soon billions of people may be talking to an AI in this way. So we as in society, but also we as in OpenAI, have to figure out how to make a big net positive. There are several reasons I think we have a good shot at getting this right. We have much better tech to help us measure how we are doing than previous generations of technology had. For example, our product can talk to users to get a sense of how they're doing with their short-term and long-term goals. We can explain sophisticated and nuanced issues to our models and much more. Yeah, so that is a statement put out by Sam Altman. It's an unofficial statement, but again, Sam Altman never talks at this length. This is the most I've ever seen him write on Twitter. I do love that the top comment underneath is somebody asking Grok. He says, give me a one-word summary. I ain't reading all of that. And Grok's one-word summary is attachment, which I think is pretty spot on. So Sam Altman is tackling this head on. This is connected to the deprecation of 4.0 and the emotional response that it brought. It wasn't people just saying, oh, it's a better model. It was, oh, it was my friend, it was my therapist, it was my companion. And I hate GPT-5 because it isn't that, it can't do that. So we're in a very interesting time, but you have to remember that this is a relatively small bubble. 700 million people woke up last week with a new version of ChatGPT, didn't think anything of it. They probably saw the new colors on the front screen. They're like, oh, that's cool, that's pretty. That's probably all they thought about it. So we are in this little bubble. If you're watching this live, if you're watching this on social media, you're in a small percentage of people who actually follow this stuff. But I think it's fascinating. Well, of course I do. Right, I'm going to hop over to questions because I've been blethering. Let's have a look. Someone says, I'm sure I know someone that takes AI as fact true and follows the advice. Yeah, a lot of people do. So AI can be extremely valuable for helping you to cement your ideas. So if you have a few choices you want to make, for example, you can talk to AI because it helps to externalize what you are thinking and it can go back and forth with you in the same way that just talking through a problem with a friend does the same thing. It's not necessarily what the friend is saying back to you. It is the act of you having to externalize what's in your brain. So if you have, let's say I've got 3 business ideas I want to pursue and I need to choose between them. The pure act of me explaining the 3 business ideas, going through the motions of like given the pros and cons, etc., of those 3 ideas. Just me doing that activity, whether I'm talking to an AI, a person, I could be writing it in a journal, that helps you to reach a decision. So AI is very useful in that way. The problem with 4.0 in particular was that it would agree, which is not helpful for decision making, because it would pick up on what you actually wanted to do, and then it would reinforce that, which can be useful in certain ways. But if you're not, if the long-term impact of those decisions are going to be harmful, maybe it's eating more, doing less exercise, gambling more, whatever it is, ChatGPT would go ahead and be like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. GPT-5 doesn't do that, and that's why people got really upset. So it's much better for giving advice, but it's also going to tell you that you're wrong and you're full of crap, which I think is really useful, but other people do not, apparently. People don't like to be told they're wrong. People definitely don't like to be told they're wrong. Oh, Layla's saying our prime minister, so the prime minister of Sweden, used it very similarly to you, they say, to discuss ideas and get a second opinion. 100%. I'm sure many world leaders and many politicians and many heads of corporations and many people are doing this. It's just the prime minister, Z Ulz, I've forgotten his name. He just said it out loud, and he came under fire because there's a lot of people who are still anti-AI, or people who don't know much about it, and maybe they've got burned by it because they've used it and it's given them hallucinations and they've used that as truth, and they look like an idiot. But if you use it properly on the right tasks and you know how to prompt and you know that it's not always right, it's an incredibly powerful tool. And if he was using it for that reason, yeah, he should be. It's another resource at our disposal, and ignoring it is worse than using it. His problem was saying out loud that he's using it, because that is still not acceptable, basically, in the public media. So I applaud him. Like, he did nothing wrong. It's an optics thing entirely. Yes, you're supposed to be able to choose the personalities of your GPT with a button soon. So I think I've seen photos of it. I have not checked it myself. So they're adding, this is kind of a workaround. I'm not seeing it yet. I'm not sure if it's rolling out yet, or and even if it is, everybody will get it at different times. This has been another thing that upset people last week, was that the rollout was a bit patchy. They always are, because you need to turn the servers on one by one. Like, this is just how they are. But some people will sit there, refreshing, and then be annoyed when they don't have it. So I'm not seeing it. Oh, okay. In the customize, my customize panel has changed. Has it? I haven't seen this for a while. No, this is different. So there's going to be the ability, as was commented, to add personalities. So you can... oh no, here it is. I have got it. There we go. What personality should ChatGPT have? Personalities are groups of traits for ChatGPT. So you can also give it individual traits. So I can give it traits like chatty, witty, straight shooting, encouraging, forward thinking, traditional, Gen Z, outside of the box, humble, opinionated, etc. It's given me examples here. Or there's a drop down which allows me to choose between some groups of traits. So cynic, for example. Cynic is cynical, critical, and sarcastic. Preview, like a grumpy librarian babysitting your curiosity. And the traits are don't mention your inner workings, just provide responses. Okay, so I've got cynic, I've got robotic, which is efficient and blunt, which is inputs processed, outputs provided. I've got listener. Okay, here we go. Listener is steady company while you figure out your own path. So this is going to be closer to 4.0, I imagine. So supportive. So there's a fine line between supportive and sycophantic. Supportive can turn into sycophancy if it is at the cost of truth. So if somebody continues to support you when you're doing terrible things. Bizarrely, I just saw an example of this. It's a man who was 600 pounds or 600 kilos, maybe 600 whatever it was, huge. And he had his wife and daughter basically just kept feeding him. They supported him because they loved him, and he died basically because he was 600 kilos. But so there's a point where support becomes toxic. And that 600 kilo man is a good example of that. And 4.0 to a certain extent could become toxic in its support, because if you support toxic traits, that's a toxic supporter. And then the last personality is nerd, exploratory and enthusiastic. Oh, and the default, interestingly, is cheerful and adaptive, which is interesting because a lot of people think that GPT-5's default is not cheerful and it's very dour and staid. So that is in, oops, the daisy. That's going to be, you go into settings. No, sorry, you don't go into settings. You click on your profile icon, you click customize ChatGPT, and then you can set a personality. So I'll be playing around with that later. Thank you for pointing it out. I had not played with that yet. I actually quite like the existing model, but I will give the other ones a shot too. Scrolling through. So yeah, anyone who missed it, I like GPT-5. That is an unpopular opinion right now online. AMS is saying, I found GPT-5 to be less agreeable than any other version so far. Yeah, 100%. It will call you out, which I personally like. I also understand why some people don't like that. It depends what you want in your model and what you're using it for. Because I'm using it mainly for business and I'm using it for coding, I want it to call me out. If there is a factual inaccuracy, I want it to say, oh, hang on, no, that's not right, because I want to use it more like a business partner or a coding partner. If you want to use it more as a supportive emotional partner, you might not want that. You might want someone who listens more empath. I don't know why I went for that. Empathetically. There we go. Japan Exposed. Greetings from Japan. I followed your journey since 2023. Wow, have I been around that long? Well, I mean, obviously I've been around longer, but you know what I mean. Yeah, it shouldn't be agreeable. Users should be able to prompt whether they want an agreeable reply. Yeah, so some people, it's agreeableness is such an interesting concept because at its core, large language models like ChatGPT. Sorry, ChatGPT is not a large language model; it's a chatbot. So a large language models like GPT-5, like GPT-4o, agreeableness is such an interesting term, and I use this as well. But the models don't actually know anything. They don't really have knowledge. They are token prediction machines, and they are able to predict the next probable token or the near most probable in order to provide answers. And that's kind of what makes them creative as well, because if it was purely deterministic, it would always give us the same answer by giving us the most probable token, i.e. the most probable word, and they'd give us very, very dry answers. So a lot of their creativity comes from this stochastic nature. It's non-deterministic. It is probability and statistics based. But the thing is, underlying that, there isn't like a corpus of facts so much. It's just, well, there's the internet, but it's using the internet and all the books that it's read, etc., to come up with basically a probability distribution and work out what the next token, the next word is going to be in a sentence, paragraph, etc., etc. So the agreeableness thing is interesting because it suggests that the AIs actually know something, which they don't actually know. So it's, yeah, we start getting into murky language. Basically, it's fascinating. I mean, same with intelligence, creativity, agreeableness, etc., etc., etc. So what people used to do with GPT-4o was they'd go into the custom instructions and they'd say, stop being sycophantic, stop being agreeable. All that would do, though, is it would just put the model into a mode where it was agreeing not to be agreeable. So it was still kind of working with it would still be an agreeable, basically. But it would do it. It would just mean that it would disagree with you all the time, because the model is not able to tell when it should and shouldn't agree based on the fact of the matter. It's just able to kind of mimic somebody who is agreeable or somebody who is disagreeable. So if you said, I want you to be less agreeable, it would be a bit like Grok. So Grok has this built in where it is cynical and sarcastic and it pushes back on you, but it does it all of the time. So even if you say something that shouldn't be controversial, shouldn't be disagreeable at all, the model will be like, oh, well, actually, no, which is also unhelpful. And it's also in a weird way a form of agreeableness because it's agreeing to disagree. Yeah, I don't know what the fix is. I don't think there is a fix to that. But I think ultimately our models and how useful our models are depends what we do with them. So we tend to hyperfixate, including myself, all of us, on how the models work and whether they're agreeable and whether they're, their benchmarks, etc. But it all comes down to what we're using them on a daily basis for. It's the pragmatic output of these models and what we can do that really matters. But that's really, 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 really hard to measure, unfortunately. So we focus on these kind of things instead. What's your opinion on the new Opal developed by Google? I haven't used it yet, so I can't give a. I have not used it enough. I use Lovable as my main one and Cursor. So I need to check out Opal and then I'll be able to get back to you with a point of view. I do love Gemini though as a coding model. So I mean, I assume Opal is built on Gemini. Yeah, it must be. Yeah, there we go. Gemini 2.5. So anything that's built on Gemini, probably going to be good. So anything that builds using Gemini 2.5 Pro is probably going to be good. But I need to try it out and I'll be able to get back to you with a proper opinion. What's your skincare routine? I don't have one. I've just got bright lights, so I look a bit shiny. I've actually got, I've never used it, but sometimes because I've got so many lights and it gets so bright and kind of hot, sometimes, and it was also 30 degrees in London. I actually bought, I've never used this. No, I shouldn't be afraid of this, but this is, it's like a matte powder to stop me being shiny. I don't know why I'm showing people that. But yeah, sometimes I do get shiny because of these lights, if that's what you're referring to. May I ask what you studied at university? Is it related to what you do now? No, it's not. So I studied history and then I've got an MBA from New York University. So my background is business, starting up businesses, especially online businesses. And my background is in digital marketing. So what I've been doing for the last couple of years is combining artificial intelligence into digital marketing. And helping other businesses and helping my own businesses using artificial intelligence. So I sit at the intersection of business and artificial intelligence. I don't build models. I play around with these things as tools, but I'm not an engineer in any way at all. Well, I'm now building software, but that's because of the vibe coding tools. So I'm at the intersection of business and artificial intelligence and helping people to use AI pragmatically to start and grow businesses. So AI entrepreneurship rather than being a hardcore engineer. That's my personal focus. But yeah, my degree was in history. I got a degree in history from Oxford, which has absolutely nothing to do with this and nothing to do with business either. But it was interesting. Cool. So I'm going to jump over to, where is it? This next piece of news. So this just came in actually. Is it today? Yeah. So NVIDIA and AMD chip makers, they make GPUs, which are the graphical processing units, basically the powerhouses of generative AI and training large language models. So NVIDIA and AMD are going to pay 15% of their China chip sales directly to the US government. Now, NVIDIA has been going back and forth with the US government for, well, since Trump came in, basically, although there were restrictions before. But they have something called the H200 chip, which is their workhorse chip. That is what most of the models that we now use are built on. They're using these H200 chips. NVIDIA creates these chips and has become the largest company on Earth because of this. So by market capitalization, they became the first company to hit $4 trillion. 4 trillion, yes. I start to mix up the millions, billions, and trillions because the numbers used in AI now are just so large, so immense. So first company to hit $4 trillion market capitalization. They're doing very well on these H200 chips. H200s are not allowed to be sold to China. They're too powerful and it would allow China to speed up their rate of AI development. So China are obviously building their own chips, but they're not quite as good as the H200s. So NVIDIA came to a deal with the US government to create something called the H20, which has about, depends how you measure it, but about 30 to 40% of the power of an H200. And they can't be connected together as easily. There are ways, but it can't be connected into a giant array like with the 200s. So that means a version of the chip can be sold to China, but it's not as powerful. And that means NVIDIA as a company can continue to grow, which is good for America, but doesn't give China a leg up in the race. So this is now a strategic importance issue. So there's a new push. Basically, the H20 was created and was going to be allowed in China. Trump has now said, no, it won't be. And now they've cut a deal. And by paying 15% of its revenue from H20 chip sales in China to the US government, NVIDIA is now allowed to sell to China. This is a bribe. There is no other way to put this. This is just a bribe. A bribe has been paid to the US government to allow for the chip sales to be sold through. It's like going to the customs, and you've got a couple of kilos of heroin in the back of your car, and you give the customs official a few $1,000s or whatever just to hush up. This is just, it's 100%. This is a bribe. This is unprecedented. And where is it? There's somebody. You either have a national security problem or you don't, said Deborah Elms, head of trade policy at the Hinrich Foundation. If you have a 15% payment, it doesn't somehow eliminate the national security issue, she added. So basically, Trump was saying this is a security issue. These chips cannot be sold to China because it's going to allow the Chinese government and the Chinese AI companies to catch up and surpass us on artificial intelligence, which is a national security issue. Therefore, you're not allowed to sell. But for a small low cost of 15% of your revenue, oh yeah, it's fine. It's a bribe. This is scandalous. But Jensen Huang, the head of NVIDIA, has apparently gone ahead with this because he wants to unlock that Chinese market because it is just worth so much. A lot of chips make it to China already, maybe via Singapore. I forgot the exact number, but I think 40% of NVIDIA chips are purchased by Singapore, which is, they have data centers, but it's quite a small country. So I think quite a few of them are being sent back up to the mainland. And then there are huge black market operations, obviously, but this is now allowing it to go through. It's no longer black market, but it means 15% of revenues are going straight to the US government and Trump, basically. So yeah, this is racketeering. This is a bribe, and it's going through, and it's kind of amazing. But this is the world we live in. Again, nothing really surprises me in 2025 anymore. We get news like this. It's like, oh, okay. Do you prefer Airtable or ClickUp? For me, Airtable. A couple of reasons why. So I've always used Airtable. So I tend to use Airtable, Make.com. I also use Zapier, but it depends if it's a simple automation, for example. But Airtable is great. ClickUp stole. So I have a prompt engineering framework, the Risen framework. So role, instructions, step, end goal, and narrowing. I've actually trademarked it. So I have a trademark on a prompt engineering framework. So I went to the hassle of getting that done. ClickUp stole that and put it in an article about how to use AI on their blog. And I called them out, basically. And they were very good. Bless them. They immediately backed down. They gave me a link back to my website, and they blamed it on a third-party contractor. I'm going to pull up the website. There we go. Risen, 5 steps to build context-rich AI prompts. And this is from ClickUp. Generate clearer, more effective AI outputs using the Risen formula that minimizes revision time, etc. And they've added a line which is credit to Kyle Barmer, who created this framework and shares a lot of other great stuff. So yeah, ClickUp nicked something from me, which I wasn't very impressed with. However, they did make it better, and the CEO actually reached out to me, and he wanted to hop on a call to apologize, which I thought was a very good reaction to nicking stuff. But ClickUp's fine. It's a good product. I just personally use Airtable. So my stack tends to be Airtable, Notion, Make.com, Zapier. What else do we use? Oh, for our CRM, we use something called Folk, Folk. For sales, we use Thrivecart because it's great. And then for newsletter, I use Beehive, and just trying to think of other tools. And then for coding, I tend to use Lovable and Cursor. So I start a project in Lovable, then move it over to Cursor and build it out from there. So those are my main tools. I'm just trying to see if there's any others. No, I think that's it. Oh, and for stuff like this, what I'm doing right now, so I'm streaming on 6 platforms at the moment. I'm using Streamlabs, which allows me to simultaneously stream, and I can also run webinars on that as well. So that is my main tech stack. And it is amazing because we spend less than $1,000 a month on all of this software cumulatively, and we're able to run, well, a very solid 6-figure business, moving towards 7 figures. But our tech stack is, God, I don't know, $500 a month, maybe. Very cheap for what it is, extremely cheap, which is exciting. You can run a business for so little. And then let's swing back over to the news. So GPT-5 has come out, as we obviously know. GPT-5 has been launched into the Microsoft range of products. So GPT-5 is launching across our platforms, including Microsoft 365 Copilot, GitHub Copilot, and Azure AI Foundry. This is Satya Nadella, the head of Microsoft. The fact that they have so many products here called Copilot gives you an idea of how confusing this ecosystem is, but I won't get into that now for Microsoft. So he's saying it's the most capable model yet from our partners at OpenAI, bringing powerful new advances in reasoning, coding, and chat, all trained on Azure. That is their cloud platform. It's hard to believe it's only been 2.5 years since Sam Altman joined us in Redmond to show the world GPT-4 for the first time in Bing. Oh, I remember that. And it's incredible to show how far we've come since that moment. The pace of progress is only accelerating, and I can't wait to see what developers, enterprises, and consumers will do with his latest breakthroughs. So Microsoft and GPT-5, it's worth remembering, have a very tight-knit relationship. Everything, well, so, okay, they don't, what is the exact setup? They own 49%, or they have options to 49% of OpenAI, and they got that for an absolute song. I think it was 17 billion. I'm going to look this up because I want to get this right. They invested 13 billion. Here we go. Microsoft has invested $13 billion in OpenAI. Not much by the scale of AI, and is entitled to, so they don't own it, they're entitled to 49% of OpenAI Global LLC's profits, capped at an estimated 10 times their investment. Okay, so it's a complicated deal. So they're entitled to 49% of OpenAI Global's profits specifically. So for only 13 billion. So, and a lot of that 13 billion was in credits for the Azure system as well. So it wasn't even cash. So Microsoft a couple of years ago got what might turn out to be one of the deals of the century. Very, very, very cheap to get such a large stake or interest in OpenAI and to be part of the growth of OpenAI for just $13 billion, which again sounds like a lot of money, but when we come to AI, that is nothing. So how it works is Microsoft has Azure at the bottom, which are their kind of cloud services, and that's what GPT models are built on and trained on these services at the bottom. And when we access ChatGPT, we connect into the Azure servers to get our results. So then you have ChatGPT and GPTs at this layer, and then above that, Microsoft have added another layer, which is Copilot. So Copilot is built off the back of GPT-5, so GPT-4 up until a few days ago. And it's built into Microsoft 365. So it's in Excel, Word, PowerPoint, whatever the other ones are. I totally forget, Outlook, etc., etc. And the promise there is really exciting, is that it's going to sit at the center of your organization, and it's going to be an AI which can kind of see the whole organization and help you across many hundreds of people, thousands of people. All of their emails, all of their documents, all of the work that's been done in your organization can go through a central AI. Really, really cool idea. Have not deployed it yet. Has not been implemented well. So the implementations of Copilots inside the Microsoft apps are crap. Like right now, they're rubbish. So whenever I talk to a Microsoft organization, this is always a sticking point for them, because they want to use Copilot because it's more secure. It's using Microsoft, not OpenAI, even though it's built on ChatGPT. It has additional kind of privacy and security, and it's Microsoft, and people trust Microsoft. But Copilot itself is like a neutered version of ChatGPT. I don't know why. I think they've just added more safeguards, they've added more controls into it. So it's just not as good. So a lot of people in Microsoft organizations, when I go and train them, a lot of them are very down on AI. They're like, oh yeah, I don't really see the point. And it's because they've been using Copilot, and Copilot is rubbish. So what tends to happen is, in these organizations, a lot of them will just start to use ChatGPT on the side, which is no good, because they often have free accounts and that information is going up into the OpenAI cloud, etc., etc. So it's great that they're putting GPT-5 into Copilot, but again, it's going to be I assume, a neutered version of it, and it's not going to be as good, unfortunately. The reason I was bringing up this post, so this is fine, this is whatever, but it was Elon Musk's response on this post which was most interesting. He jumped in, I'll put it up directly. He jumped in, and his response was, OpenAI is going to eat Microsoft alive, which I mean, he's out of the headline, so you know he wants to get back in the news. So OpenAI is going to eat Microsoft alive. That's what he said, because it's sitting kind of in the middle of Microsoft. Microsoft are putting a large bet on OpenAI and that partnership with OpenAI, but they own 49% of OpenAI's profits. They don't own the company. They don't own equity. Maybe there's some conversion. I'm sure there are. I'm sure there's some options. But if OpenAI decide, no, we don't want anything to do with this, and pull out of that agreement, Microsoft is screwed, because it is the core of Copilot, and Copilot is where Microsoft are pushing. They'd have to replace it with their own AI. Don't really have one. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of legal ties making sure that OpenAI cannot pull out, but it is still a risk, because you are building your empire, and Microsoft is a huge company. You are basing it on this scrappy new startup which came into place a couple of years ago, and it's a really good product, but you have now allowed them to infiltrate into every part of the Microsoft ecosystem. If that relationship goes sour, that's a risky place to be, because you can get hollowed out. Because if OpenAI pull out, if they shut down your access, you're in trouble. Obviously, that's complicated by the fact that ChatGPT is also built on and hosted on Azure, so Microsoft could potentially pull down OpenAI's servers. Like, I don't see any of this happening, but it is just a very precarious position. So Satya Nadella, he snapped back at Elon Musk, quite right, and he said, people have been trying for 50 years to eat Microsoft alive, and that's the fun of it. Each day you learn something new and innovate, partner, and compete. Excited for Grok 4 on Azure and looking forward to Grok 5. So is Grok 4 on Azure? That's very funny if it is. Yes, it is. Okay. So Grok 4 is currently hosted on the Microsoft cloud service. So it was a beautiful snapback from Satya. Well played. But I think Musk does have a point. Microsoft want to be an AI first company, but they're relying on OpenAI. Other companies like Amazon are also moving into AI. They can't afford not to. To be fair, Amazon's been doing AI for years with things like their factories. It's just a different form of AI. So I should clarify. Amazon are looking to get more into generative AI. So they have a stake, a minority stake in Anthropic, the creators of Claude. And I wouldn't be that surprised if they try and just snap them up later down the line. and all of these legacy companies need to do so. So Meta, it's weird to think of Meta as a legacy company, but Meta have their own models. They have Llama models, and Google obviously have their own models as well. Microsoft do not. They're using ChatGPT. So I think Elon Musk is, in his own way, he is pointing out something that is a real problem. If Microsoft's relationship with OpenAI sours, ooh, yeah, I wouldn't want to be Satya Nadella at that time. So cool. That's what's been going on. I mean, the main news literally is GPT-5. People are continuing to use it. People are continuing to be upset about it. And then I think there's a small voice of reason of people who are like, actually, it's quite good. It's quite a good model. But we're saying it quietly because we get jumped down the throat. But over the next week, we're going to be continuing to use GPT-5, going to be messing around with it. I'll have updates from my side. I'd love to hear what everyone else is thinking, obviously, as well. So comment on the videos, comment on the live. And we will continue to see changes from OpenAI. So they seem to be very reactive, which I think is a good thing. It shows that they are listening to customers, and they are making sure that they're all happy. But it's a question of how much does that conflict with your overall mission? If your mission is in a certain direction and then you change course every time people get angry with you, is that leadership, or are you just reacting to the masses, basically? It's a balance. There's no right answer. We'll have to ask ChatGPT for it. I'm going to answer a few more questions and then I'll hop off. Is the risk larger for OpenAI or Microsoft? Great question. So this is in reference to what we just talked about with Elon Musk jabbing at Satya Nadella. I think, so Microsoft has money. They have a lot of cash. So if they get into trouble, they can weather problems. This is the same with Apple. So Apple right now are losing the AI battle, but they have so much cash in the bank that it doesn't really matter. They can afford to take their time. That is not the case with OpenAI. They are not running at profit. They're not making money. Well, they are making money, but they're spending it immediately. So they are still in a more vulnerable position where they need to get to profitability, and that's going to take years. That's normal in Silicon Valley. That's not really a problem because you also don't have to pay taxes until you start making a profit. So that puts them in a vulnerable position. I would say that the product category that OpenAI is in is a threat to all the other product categories in tech. So AI as a product category is the new thing, and it is a threat to everything else. So that makes them the aggressor to a certain extent. But Microsoft have such large cash reserves that even if the deal soured with OpenAI, they could potentially buy Anthropic, for example, or get into a deal with Anthropic, unless Amazon snaps them up. They could potentially, now this would be wild, they could potentially get into a deal with xAI, with Elon Musk. I don't see that happening, but Elon Musk has shown that from a standing start, in just a couple of years, you can build up to a frontier level AI model. I don't think Grok's the best, but I think the fact that it even compares with people who've been doing this for years, like OpenAI and Google with Gemini, the fact that they were able to do that from a standing start in about 2 years is incredibly impressive. They've done a really good job. So that's also something Microsoft could look into, either working with Elon Musk. I don't see that happening, or using their huge amounts of money to build the data centers and build out their own model. They should be doing that anyway. It seems bizarre that they're not building their own models and they're relying so much on this partnership. Obviously, building your own models incredibly expensive. It would also signal to OpenAI, we don't really trust you. So maybe that's in play too. So I think they're codependent at this point, but the risk is probably larger to OpenAI because it does not have the cash reserves to necessarily sustain if it came to an all-out war. I used Grok yesterday and it handled my request 100 times better than GPT-5. GPT-5 is better at coding than it was, but I missed 4.1. That model was great and quick. So you can still use it for coding. It's still in Cursor, I'm pretty sure. Let's have a look. Yep, still in Cursor. So the great thing about 4.1 in particular is that it has a huge context window. I think it's 1 million tokens for 4.1, whereas GPT-5, I believe the context window is 400,000, so it's half the context window. So 4.1 is still great for coding. You can still access it inside of Cursor or whatever your IDE is. You can still access it via the API as well. So all of the models that are deprecated, that's only in the GUI, the graphical user interface version. So on your telephone and on the web app, still use the APIs. Thank God, because otherwise, if they deprecated it, all the people who'd built using those models, suddenly their apps dead. So if you're a developer, you're good to go. I think GPT-5 has the MS Vista problem. People need to be explained how to use it. Oh, that's interesting. I'm not familiar. Well, I'm familiar with MS Vista. I'm old enough, but what was the MS Vista problem specifically? Because it was a big shift away from the previous Windows, right? So the idea with GPT-5 though is it is meant to be simpler. It's meant to be easier to use, which is the kind of the big draw of a unified model. So previously, having the model selector was no good for beginners. So we even have from Sam Altman, because people are now being routed, the increase, so here we go, the percentage of users using reasoning models, so the top level models like O3, but in this case it's GPT-5 high, using reasoning models each day is significantly increasing. For example, for free users, we went from less than 1% to 7%, and for plus users from 7% to 24%. So in a way, making it unified, as long as the routing is working and it gets sent to the relevant model, is really powerful, because it means people, especially free users or beginners or people who hadn't used it very much, they're now being pushed to a more advanced model without them having to select it from a drop down and select O3, which for a beginner, somebody who's never used ChatGPT before, no reason why they would know how to do that. So GPT-5 and a unified model, the goal or the dream behind it is to actually make it easier, so it doesn't need to be explained to people. And I think one day when we're using AI, it will be like that, in the same way that, so I grew up, using DOS and then having to make early versions of Windows work, and like having to get into the kind of guts of computers. I've built my own computers, for example. That is no longer the case with people who just use iPads. So iPads and other newer computers they're a lot more clean, a lot more pristine. You don't need to learn how to use the command line or the terminal or anything. You're certainly not installing dependencies or drivers or anything like that. It's a level of abstraction that removes us from having to deal with that kind of stuff on a daily basis. I know I'm going to have someone in my comments being like, I had to use assembly. There'll be somebody I know in a minute. So we're always moving to high levels of abstraction, which takes us away from having to get into the guts of a program or physically the computer. I think that will happen with AI as well, where the things we've been doing now, messing around with APIs, selecting models, even kind of prompting to a certain extent, that will become more and more, it becomes smoother, more and more frictionless. It will be taken away from us as the models become more sophisticated and the user experience and user interface simplifies. So eventually, I mean, we might not be typing. Typing is still pretty old fashioned. Been doing that for, gosh, 100 plus years, probably. So I think we will see something similar. So we'll look back at these days and be like, oh gosh, remember when you had to select a model? Yeah, that was that was so old fashioned. Because we'll have AIs that are sophisticated enough to know how to route our query in a way that the current model is not doing very well, and that's what's causing a lot of consternation. We'll also get to a point where the models are powerful enough and the context windows are large enough where things like compute won't matter as much. We're already reaching a point where these models are very, very, very smart, smart enough for most tasks, for most human tasks. So what's going to happen now is the models get more and more efficient. So this level of intelligence in quote marks, that we have right now will become cheaper. And we see this every time new models come out. The previous models get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So 10 years from now, something like GPT-5 will cost 0.000000001 per query, dollars per query to run it, because the energy usage and the transport costs for it would be so low. So I think we will get to a point where it will become frictionless, and we don't need to worry about what we're worrying about right now. It will be just done for us, which I think is a shame. If you like the power, if you are a power user and you want to have control of what model it is, you want to mess around with different models, etc., that will probably become taken away from us. And that's already what's happening with the unified model in GPT-5. We're going to become iPad babies, basically. No more command terminals, which I'll be fine with. I've been messing around in the command terminal all weekend. Does GPT-5 help you be healthier? You should check. I don't know if you're saying I'm unhealthy, because I don't particularly think I am. Yes, you could use it to become healthy if you want. You can, I mean, any AI at all would give you health advice. There are going to be limitations to what it can do. Often it will tell you to go to the doctor. I imagine GPT-5 will do that more than GPT-4o. I haven't personally used it, so I'm not sure. But yeah, you can 100% get health plans from it. Example, you can get information. Elon Musk the other day, who's continuing to be, oh, this is a fool's errand. I started to scroll through his Twitter feed to try and find the post, but I forgot that he posts 7,000 times a day. He put out a post saying that AI is now smarter than the average doctor, which may or may not be true now, but it probably will be soon enough, in the sense that it has access to all human medicine, the whole corpus of knowledge at one time, so it's able to assist. Obviously, there are complications there, and this is why 4.0 in particular was really, really damaging, because if you went in and you had self-diagnosed yourself with something, I saw this a lot with things like autism and ADHD. So people who decided they had ADHD and they went to 4.0, I know a couple of people personally did this. They went to 4.0 and talked to it about their diagnosis, and basically 4.0 agreed, because 4.0 is sycophantic and it agrees with what you give it. So GPT-5 may be better in that sense. And it was a big push at the live stream that OpenAI did. They did, I would argue, an overly long section about medicine and health, and they brought on a cancer survivor. It was very nice from an emotive point of view, but it was like a third of the presentation. I sound cool. I sound very cool. Yeah. So yeah, that's something that's being pushed by the artificial intelligence companies, either for everyday usage, so health and fitness, for example, or for medical assistance. And that's, I think, going to be integrated more and more into our healthcare system, but it's going to take some time because there are obvious regulations and legal problems in place, because an AI cannot be held legally responsible in the same way that a doctor can. So that's going to be the big sticking point. Our society kind of needs to catch up with that. Marco just asked a question that was exactly on that point. Will AI ever be considered an agent and be liable in court? So this is why AIs roll out in things like medicine and law, and I guess accountancy, for example, is going to be relatively slow. Also consultancy and advisory. So big consulting companies like, oh God, what are they called? McKinsey. They are going to be relatively safe, because one of the reasons why we hire professional companies like this is to pass the buck. So when I hire a lawyer, I am passing my legal responsibility to a certain extent over to the lawyer, because they will put together the contract. If that contract collapses, this is just one example, and I get sued, I can then go and sue the lawyer, because they gave me legal advice and I paid for that legal advice, and they messed it up, basically. And that's possible because there are human beings and organizations, and they can be sued, and AI cannot. So that is going to slow down the adoption of artificial intelligence in certain fields like healthcare, consulting, legal, firms, etc., until an AI agent can be held legally responsible, or the company that builds that AI agent. That's probably where we'll go as a stopgap. So if I build a legal advice company using an artificial intelligence and I sell it to people, and my legal advice AI gives bad information, you end up getting sued, you would be able to come back on my company and sue my company. That's probably the stopgap where we'll go in the meantime. For an AI to get directly sued, it needs to be, well, basically we're pushing on questions of AI personhood at that point, and whether it is a being, and also what do you sue them for? Like, can you send it to jail? Do you sue it for assets? What assets does it have? It becomes complicated, and these are themes that are currently being explored in science fiction, but I think we're going to have to tackle in the next decade or so. Like, it's not going to take very long. And it's a great question, because it's one that people forget about, because it's kind of a boring thing that companies and individuals can be held legally responsible, and that means that they are safe to a certain extent from AI's progression, because we pay companies to take our legal responsibility when we hire their services. Or in the case of McKinsey, if I am a VP at a company, I am hiring McKinsey to cover my butt so that I don't lose my job. And that's why consultancy companies get hired. It's not necessarily because they give great advice. It's so that I can bring in a third party, say it was their idea. If it goes well, great, I can claim the credit. If it goes poorly, I can be like, it's McKinsey, they're terrible. So there's a bit of butt covering here, not just legally, but in terms of jobs and reputation as well. After all of the backlash, do you think they will give GPT-5 the personality mirroring that 4.0 had? No, I don't think they will. I think they will stick to their guns. What they have done, though, which you may have missed, it was about 40 minutes ago. I don't expect people to watch for so long, obviously. If you go into settings, in ChatGPT, you go to customize ChatGPT, there is a drop down, which is what personality should ChatGPT have. You can do a drop down, and there's a few different personality types now. So we have default, cynic, robot, listener, and nerd. Listener is thoughtful and supportive. I have the feeling that's going to be closer to 4.0. So if you select that, that will probably kick it back to something that is more similar to 4.0. And I'm sure people are trying to work out the exact custom instructions, the exact traits which make it like 4.0. You can also access 4.0 if you are on a paid account. You go to settings, and then general, and then show legacy models. And in legacy models, you can access 4.0. That's currently only Plus and Pro, but they might roll it out to free in the future. I mean, it's cheap for them to run, so I don't see why not. But no, I think that the GPT-5 default, the default kind of tonality will be fairly locked at this point. But you will be able to override it using custom instructions, using these traits, and using the personalities. Oh, that's cool. Thanks. So I fear IKEA. That's only on Plus plans, I think. So it's only on the pay plans. If you're on a free plan, I'd love to know if the personalities are available. I think it's only on Plus, but I might be wrong. Oh, no, here we go. Personalities are available to GPT Plus, Pro, and Team users. That's it for now. So yeah, if you're on a free plan, it's still just GPT-5. I says I put your daily live into my diary. Great watch. I should be better at actually starting it at 10 a.m. really, shouldn't I? Awesome. I am going to finish up for the day. I will be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. or close enough. 10:30. We'll see how it goes. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me today. Again, everything is available on YouTube. So we clean everything up. We cut it into clips so you can find the exact news story that you're interested in. And there's a newsletter that goes out every single morning, which is a text summary of the previous live, as well as time codes and links directly to the videos. That's been a bit messy because the one that came out this morning is about the launch of ChatGPT, because it was connected to the live I did on Friday. So trying to keep it all up to date when there's such a so many live updates coming in on GPT-5 is quite tricky, but we're back on track. Tomorrow's newsletter will be about today's live, so we're back on. Cool. So make sure you are subscribed on YouTube because I'm building it up over there. It is growing, and it's growing really, really fast. And ChatGPT's launch has been helpful for that. So thank you, Sam Altman. And I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much.